Welcome in, Bills Mafia, and welcome to the Go Bills podcast. I am your host and founder of the channel, Brett. Glad to be with you on this fantastic Friday night. The 3-6 Cleveland Browns take on the 6-3 Buffalo Bills, who are coming off of a 33-30 overtime loss to the Minnesota Vikings last week. The Bills' offense in the second half last week was atrocious in some ways, not being able to convert on certain drives, and they weren't able to keep the ball on their side of the field. The number of points that Buffalo shot themselves in the foot, pun intended, in that was not very good. And Buffalo could have done a much better job of keeping the ball in their side and making sure that the offense stayed on the field, which they didn't do a good job of, especially with Josh Allen. But they just shot themselves in the foot, and that's inexcusable. In this show, we will preview the Bills game and talk about our key matchups, keys to the games, as well as give our score predictions for the game. So without further ado, let's get this thing rocking and rolling. But first, let's go with the comments on YouTube real quick. Red, White, and Bills said, F, yes, let's effing beat the effing F out of the baby. Can't wait for that. Shout out to the Red, White, and Bills. They are one of our helpers with a bunch of different content that we've been creating on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook as well. And they do a fantastic job. We've been collaborating with them on YouTube, going on their page, as well as having Sean from the Red, White, and Bills on our page. So give Sean a shout out and go out and follow him on social media. He is cooler than the other side of a pillow. And that is how I refer to him, as cooler than the other side of the pillow, Mr. Sean Kula. Love him to death and thankful for him. And he said, Brett, you do an amazing job as well. Appreciate you, Sean. Appreciate all the work that you do through your page as well. So let's begin real quick. Let's go over the game, starting with the Bills. The Bills were supposed to play this game in Orchard Park, New York. And my thoughts and prayers are with everybody that has been affected by the snow. Hopefully, nobody has a lot of damage. I know that there's been a lot of power outages in Western New York, so hope everybody is okay. And we are praying for you. But the Bills were supposed to play this game in Highmark Stadium, but due to the inclement weather, the game was moved to Detroit. I know there was expectations of up to 5 feet of snow, and if you didn't see, the Bills Stadium was covered in a lot of snow today. So the NFL decided to move the game to Detroit, which is a good thing because Buffalo is going to be playing in Detroit next week on Thanksgiving. So this gives them a little bit of an advantage to get back into the indoor stadiums. And I know Josh has a good record at 6-0 or 6-1 in regular season games indoors. So that's good numbers for the Bills. The Bills have lost 2 straight games going back to the Jets game and the overtime loss to the Minnesota Vikings. The low light has been quarterback Josh Allen, who has had a ton of interceptions, as well as the costly fumble at the 1-yard line that gave the Minnesota Vikings a score and took that game into overtime. Buffalo has had a lot of struggles with Josh Allen. He has 2 interceptions, including the game-ending pick last week. So Allen has had 10 interceptions this season, along with 6 over the last 3 games, and that is inexcusable. He needs to do a better job of holding onto the ball and winning the turnover rate. He looks to turn things around against the Cleveland Browns, a team that was blown out last week by the Miami Dolphins, 39-17. The Bills and Josh Allen are second in the NFL in passing yards this season with 2,733. And their defense ranks second in the NFL in scoring defense at 16.7 points per game. This week, the Bills defense will have their hands full with Nick Chubb going up against the Bills. And Buffalo has struggled in the last few games, giving up a ton of points to the running backs, as well as a ton of yards to running backs. So Buffalo is going to need to get that on track this week. Let's go with 8 games left in the regular season. Buffalo's schedule faces 4 AFC East teams, and Buffalo is going to have to play a ton of games in that division. They are currently at 7-3. Excuse me 1 second. I'm going to get that out of my dog's mouth and get that straightened out real quick. Give me 1 second. I'm going to give her a different toy to play with. So hold on 1 second, guys. Alrighty, guys. I apologize about that. That was a little bit of a technical difficulty there. Apologize about that. That was my dog making a lot of noise. I told you that she was going to be a founding member of the Go Bills podcast, and she is making her introduction to the team and making a lot of noise. So I apologize about that, but we will get it straightened out here. As I was saying, the Bills have 8 games left in the schedule, including 4 games against the AFC East teams, including matchups against the New England Patriots, as well as another matchup against the Miami Dolphins, and another one against the New York Jets as well. So the Bills will have 4 of those games coming up, as well as 4 other games as well. Let's go over the keys to the game real quick, starting with the biggest one, which is Buffalo's turnover rate. Buffalo has not been able to has been turning over the ball at almost 20% this season on their offensive possessions, and they need to do a better job of holding on to the ball. Over the last few weeks, Buffalo has turned over the ball at an alarming rate, and they are currently ranked last in the NFL in turnovers, and it is atrocious. They need to do a better job of making sure that they hold on to the ball. The biggest reason has been Josh Allen, who has turned over the ball at an alarming rate. They haven't been able to keep the offense on the field, and most of these are coming in the red zone, which is inexcusable. And you need to make sure that you're putting points on the board, not taking points off the board for your team. You talk about that point swing that you see. The point swing is a lot of points that are being affected because Buffalo isn't able to score, and they're giving up so many points. So that's a big point swing, and there's a 14-point swing that could happen. 7 points for Buffalo that they could have had versus 7 points that they're giving up for the Minnesota Vikings or another team that they played. And that point swing is determining the outcomes of these games, especially in the second half. Buffalo needs to do a better job of scoring points in the second half, which they haven't done a good job of the last few weeks. But I do think that Buffalo will get it under control. The biggest thing is Buffalo has been middle of the pack over the last few years in terms of the turnover rate. And currently they're in last place, but last year they were at 14th, and the year before they were at 16th. And I think that Buffalo will get it on track. I think it's just a little bit of a downfall over the past few weeks for Josh Allen, but I do think that he will get it straightened out. And I think that you're going to see a different Josh over the next few weeks, and he's going to be able to take what the defense gives him and away, and he'll make sure that he is checking the ball down to his different receivers. And I think that that's something that Ken Dorsey is going to do a good job of, is making sure that he tells Josh to not to turn over the ball, take the check down, which he didn't do in the game against the Minnesota Vikings. If you look at the game last week against the Minnesota Vikings, on that last play in overtime, Josh had an open receiver in Devin Singletary that he could have checked the ball down to, and it could have been a 15-yard gain, put the ball at the 5-yard line, first and goal, and Buffalo could have ran a run play and possibly gained 3 or 4 yards, set them up with a second and goal, possibly run it in and win the game. But instead, Josh Allen pressed the ball down the field, and he ended up having his second interception thrown to Patrick Peterson. And that's one of the biggest reasons why Buffalo lost this game, is because they're pressing the ball down the field, and their offense hasn't been clicking on different cylinders. If you heard on one of the podcasts that Patrick Peterson has been on, he talked about the Bills' offense, and he talked about how they were running different plays. And it seems like the Bills' offense has been very easy to read. And they need to do a better job of mixing up plays, making sure that they have plays that are designed for different receivers so that they don't have to worry about having certain routes that they are running. Patrick Peterson said it best, and he said that the plays that Josh has been running with Gabe Davis, he has been running different plays where it's the same routes. It's a go route. It's a different different post route. It's different stuff like that. And they aren't doing a good job of making sure that they are stopping them, the offense as well. But I think Buffalo will get it straightened out. They will run different plays, and they will handle it with ease, and they will get it straightened out very easily. But they have to do a better job of winning the turnover rate in this game. Go Bills, or the Red, White, and Bills said we need to do a better job of making sure that Hines and Shakira as well as Knox get more involved. And I totally agree with that, Sean. I think that that's a good point. Buffalo needs to do a good job of getting throws over the middle. They haven't done a good job of getting the ball to different receivers. They've been targeting Stephon Diggs at an alarming rate, but they have to do a better job of making sure that they are targeting different receivers in the game as well. You can't just rely on Stephon Diggs to be able to bail you out. And that's the biggest reason why I think that Buffalo is struggling is they're only throwing the ball to Diggs. That's their only outlet that they have right now. And you have seen last week they did throw the ball a little bit more to Davis, but there hasn't been that second receiver that's been able to step up. And I think that's the big reason why Buffalo has struggled. But I do think that they're going to get it straightened out. They have good receivers on their roster. They have Isaiah McKenzie, who had the concussion, but I think that they're going to get it straightened out. They're going to throw it to different receivers, and they're going to have better routes ran over the next few weeks, and there's going to be better communication. So I think that Buffalo will get it straightened out, and you're going to see more of Dawson Knox as well as receivers over the middle. Another key matchup for the game is going to be Myles Garrett going up against Dion Dawkins, and this is going to be my highlight of the game. The Bills have to do a good job of stopping Myles Garrett on offense. You know what he brings to the table each and every week, and Buffalo is going to be tasked with going up against Myles Garrett in the pass game. And last time that Dion Dawkins played Myles Garrett, he didn't have a good game, and even though it was his second season in the NFL, he gave up a ton of pressures as well as sacks in that game a few years in 2017 that they played. And Buffalo needs to do a better job of making sure that they are keeping Josh Allen upright. He does have the UCL sprain, and it would be very bad if Buffalo were to have their franchise quarterback leave the game. So Dion Dawkins has to do a good job of stepping up in coverage and making sure that he is pass blocking really well for Buffalo. And if he is struggling, you got to make sure that you move over Roger Saffold as well so that they can double cover Myles Garrett. And not only with Myles Garrett that you're going up against, you're also going up against Jadeveon Clowney. Last week, Jadeveon Clowney as well as Myles Garrett didn't have any pressures on quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. And if that is to stay the same, I think Buffalo will have a lot of success in this game, especially if they can keep Josh Allen upright. Another key to the game is going to be a great matchup that you have, or not a key to the game, I'm sorry, guys. I keep saying key to the game, but it's actually a key matchup of the game, is Stephon Diggs versus Denzel Ward. And this is another highlight matchup for the Bills going up against Denzel Ward, who is an excellent cornerback in the NFL. Last week against the Minnesota Vikings, Stephon Diggs had 12 catches for 128 yards, and he looked remarkable. But the Browns have been giving up an average of 9 yards per play over the last week. And if Buffalo is going to attack one area of the Browns, it's going to have to be that secondary of the Browns. They are going to be tested often and early, and Buffalo is going to have to utilize different receivers such as Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and Dawson Knox in order to get good matchups. Denzel Mims is an excellent cornerback, and he's going to be going up against Diggs, but you have to rely on a different receiver to step up each and every week. And Buffalo hasn't done a good job of that. Although Gabe Davis had a good game last week with the 93 yards, it just seems like they're not clicking between Josh Allen and Davis, and there's some type of chemistry that's not working out, but I think that they will get it straightened out over the next week or two. Let's go over the defense for the Bills and talk about the key matchups in the defense. And the first matchup is the most important matchup, and this is a hot matchup of the week for me, is Nick Chubb going up against the Bills' run defense. The Bills' run defense over the last 2 weeks has given up 140 yards as well as 5.7 yards per carry given up. And Nick Chubb is an excellent running back, averaging over 5 yards per carry, and this is going to be a tough matchup for the Bills. And they have to do a better job with this matchup. They're not going to have Tremaine Edmonds out there this week. He's going to be inactive. And they did get back A.J. Klein, and I am glad that they did because there's been a little bit of a question mark as to who's going to be that backup behind Matt Milano as well as Tremaine Edmonds. And finally, you have a guy that's capable of being able to be the backup to Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, and you can feel comfortable about who you have there. There's a lot of inexperience with Tyrel Dodson as well as Terrell Bernard. But now you finally have that linebacker that's going to be able to make sure that he is stepping up for the Bills, and you don't have to worry about who's going to be out there and if they're going to be a liability for the Bills. And you also have a guy that's very good in run coverage and making sure that he stops the run. So you have a great linebacker there. And finally, you can possibly, when Tremaine gets healthy, you can play a 4-3 base, which is great for the Bills. They haven't been able to do that this season, and I hope that they can continue to utilize a different setup because it seems like the coaching staff over the last few weeks has been stubborn. They haven't been able to change the mindset and get different concepts that will work for the Bills in place. They're just sticking with that nickel base and making sure that they stop the run, but that's not going to be the case. They got to do a better job of stopping the run. They have to make sure that they're adjusting to what the defense is or the offense of the opposing team is doing and adjusting their defense to what the offense is doing. And they've been very stubborn over the last few weeks in just utilizing that nickel base. And I think they could have done a better job of utilizing a 4-3 base or different types of bases that they could have done. But they stick with the 4-3 or the nickel base. That's what Buffalo runs most of. It's that nickel zone that you see, and it's kind of bit them in the foot. And I hope that Buffalo can straighten that out, and I think that they will. And there's going to be better coverage, especially with A.J. Klein coming in, who is an excellent linebacker in this league, and he understands what the Bills' defense takes. And I think he will step up very big for us this week. And he'll probably be the starter this week as well. But Klein's going to have to go up against two excellent running backs in the Cleveland Browns who have Nick Chubb as well as Kareem Hunt. There's two great running backs there. Last week, the Bills gave up 8.5 yards per carry to Dalvin Cook, and that number is inexcusable. You have to make sure that you're stopping the run this week, making sure that you're wrapping up guys, making sure that you're in the right gaps. And that's one thing that you saw from the Bills last week is they weren't in the right gaps. They weren't hitting the right angles. And I think that they'll do a better job this week of making sure that they're hitting the right angles. If you look at that run play from Dalvin Cook, the touchdown run, it was one guy that was out of position, and that caused the run to go south. Well, it was actually three guys that were out of position, but one took a bad angle on that route. The first one was Matt Milano was pulled too far to the inside, as well as the right end also pulled too far inside as well. And then Cam Lewis pulled too far. Well, he tried to come out of his break too fast, and he hit the wrong angle, and that caused Dalvin Cook to be able to go upfield and take that for a touchdown. And that's where Buffalo screwed up a lot. The next key matchup for the Bills is going to be Amari Cooper going up against Dane Jackson. And last week, Buffalo didn't do a good job of stopping the number one receiver for the Minnesota Vikings in Justin Jefferson. There was a lot of throws thrown to Justin Jefferson, and it seemed like every time that Kirk Cousins threw the ball to Justin Jefferson, he was coming down with the ball, and he was coming down with an immaculate reception that he had. Although the coverage was excellent from the cornerbacks, on 9 out of 10 of those throws that Kirk threw to Justin Jefferson, there was a 50% chance of a catch or less on each of those throws. But Buffalo needs to do a better job of covering the number one receiver. And I think that Buffalo will do a better job this week of covering the number one receiver because the Minnesota Vikings had such a great offense that you had to be aware of Dalvin Cook as well as Adam Thielen and TJ Hawkinson. Whereas the Cleveland Browns only have Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones that you have to worry about. And although they do have a good run game, you can put man coverage on the outside with Peoples-Jones as well as Amari Cooper, and you don't really have to worry about a big throw being thrown to other receivers. So I feel more comfortable with Buffalo doing that and maybe having a safety help over the top where you can also bring the safeties in run coverage as well. And I think Buffalo will do a good job of that this week. Last week, Buffalo gave up overall on defense a total of 350 plus yards in the air last week as well. And that's a number that I think Buffalo will straighten out. That's not a normal number that Buffalo gives up each week. But I do think that Buffalo will do a better job in pass coverage. And you're going to see the game start to become out of hand towards halftime. And then the Browns are going to have to throw the ball a lot, which is a strength for the Bills in coverage. And you'll see a lot better coverage from the Bills this week. The Bills only have to worry about two guys, like I said, in the pass game, and Peoples-Jones as well as Amari Cooper. And the overall offense of passing yard throws thrown to different receivers is about 60% to Peoples-Jones as well as Cooper. And other receivers are making up for about the other 40%. So Buffalo has to do a good job of locking up the team's number one receiver as well as Peoples-Jones and making sure that they do a better job of that over the next 8 weeks. And hopefully we can get Tre'Davious White back. I know there's been some speculation into what's going on for him. And I think that there's been some talk about his mindset just isn't there. But really, I think that it's mostly the Bills being cautious in terms of what's going on with Tre'Davious White. I don't think that it's necessarily his mindset isn't there or this or that. I think Buffalo's just being cautious. You've heard the talk around the NFL being that different, the NFLPA wants to have the fields changed next year. And as far as the different fields in the NFL, one of the highest rates of ACL injuries has been Ford Field. And I give a little shout out to Red, White, and Bills as well as Nickel City Mafia for that information. And I appreciate them for giving that to me. But that's been one of the issues for the Bills is the ACL injuries overall and the injury history for the Bills over the season. And I think that Buffalo should do a good job, a really good thing, and make sure that you don't play Tre'Davious White over the next 2 weeks. Get him healthy, have 10 days off, and then let Tre'Davious White play over the last 6 weeks. You're going to need him in the playoffs, and that's the time that you will need him. So make sure that he's healthy, make sure that his knee injury is fine and 100% before you put him out there on the field. Another key matchup for this week is going to be the Bills pass rush going up against the Cleveland Browns offensive line. Cleveland has one of the top 10 offensive lines in the NFL, and Buffalo's pass rush just has not been there over the last few weeks. And I take that into effect because the pass rush has been there a little bit with Von Miller as well as Greg Rousseau getting home, but it seems like there isn't a consistent pass rush that we've seen over the whole entire game. Seems like in the second half that the pass rush kind of disappears a little bit, and there isn't as much interior pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And I want to see more interior pressure from different interior linemen as far as overall pressure. And although I do think that Ed Oliver has done a good job, I just need to see a little bit more out of Tim Settle as well as Daquan Jones in the pass coverage as well. And I need to see some more hits on quarterbacks. If you look at the game last week against the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins threw the ball 54 times. I think he was only hit 7 times in that game. And that's a rate that's very, very low. And Buffalo needs to do a better job of getting more pressure on opposing quarterbacks, making sure that you're forcing some early throws and that'll allow the cornerbacks to be able to sit in coverage, make some interceptions, and make some big plays for the Bills as well. With that being said, let's go over the keys to the game, starting with the most important key to the game for me, which is going to be winning the turnover battle. We've talked about this over the last few weeks for the Bills. They haven't done a good job of winning the turnover battle, and I think if Buffalo wins this turnover battle and prevents the turnovers, Buffalo will have success in this game. I don't think that there's a team right now in the NFL that can stop the Bills on defense. Although many people will say that the New York Jets stopped the Bills on defense, I think that the Bills have shot themselves in the foot left and right on offense, and the turnovers are what's catching up for them. If you look back at the Green Bay Packers game, Buffalo should have won that game immensely. I mean, it should have been like 49-10. It shouldn't have been as close as it was. You look at the Jets game, Buffalo should have won that game by a ton more points than they did, or they lost that game by. They shot themselves in the foot, and that's what kept the Jets in that game. And the Jets played a great game plan. They had a great setup. They did a good job, but Buffalo shot themselves in the foot, and that's the biggest thing. Talk about the Minnesota game. Shot themselves in the foot in the red zone efficiency. A lot of points taken off the board. That's what caused Buffalo to lose that game. Second, Buffalo has to do a better job, especially with Josh Allen, of taking what the defense gives them, making sure that you hit the dump-off throws, use the short yardage in your favor, and hit the different receivers that are open instead of forcing the ball down the field and having the turnovers. And 1 and 2 go hand in hand. So making sure that you take what the defense gives you and making the short throws, which will allow Buffalo to utilize the clock and take over the game. Number 3 goes to the defense as well as number 4. And these are two hand-in-hand things, is stop the run. I think if Buffalo is able to stop the run in this game and they're able to control the line of scrimmage in the trenches on both sides of the ball, they will have success in this game. But you have to see more from the defensive linemen of the Buffalo Bills being able to get into the backfield for the Bills. And if they are able to get into the backfield, especially in the run game, they're going to have success in this game. It's going to be a blowout, and you're not going to see where Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt are killing us in the run game. Second, for the Bills in terms of defense, is going to be wrapping up your guys when you're tackling. You've seen over the past few weeks different plays where guys are not wrapping up the ball carrier and they're not able to take them down, and that's what's causing big plays from the defense, or from the offense, I'm sorry. And that's what's the biggest thing and biggest reason why Buffalo is struggling, is because they're not wrapping guys up. They're arm tackling. You're seeing it left and right. And if Buffalo does a better job of not arm tackling and making sure that they are staying on their feet and making sure that you're able to hit the guy and make sure that you're putting a big hit on them, you're going to see the Bills do a better job, and you're going to see less overall yards in the game. Number 3 comes down to red zone efficiency on offense. Buffalo has to do a good job of putting points on the board each and every time that they get in the red zone. And I'm not talking about 3 points when it comes to the red zone. You got to put 7 points on the board each and every time you go into the red zone. And that's where Buffalo has shot themselves in the foot, is they're not able to capitalize in the red zone. If Buffalo will capitalize in the red zone, they'll have more success. You got to target different guys such as Dawson Knox as well as Isaiah McKenzie in the red zone. These are 2 of your better receivers in the red zone, and Buffalo hasn't targeted them nearly enough this season in the red zone. Last is going to be control the time of possession. And I think this is very important because Buffalo hasn't done a good job of utilizing the time of possession and making sure that they're controlling that. If Buffalo controls the time of possession, they're going to have success in this game. As far as score predictions for the game, I have the Bills winning this game 34-13 in favor of the Bills. They'll have 5 days off, 4 days off until the game against the Detroit Lions. And then they will they'll go back home for a couple days and then fly back to Detroit for the next game. And we will see what the Bills can do, and it'll be a lot of fun. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on all social media platforms. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter at Go Bills Podcast. And don't forget to shoot us a DM on Instagram as well. We'd love to know what Bills Mafia wants and has in store for them, what they're looking for in terms of different content that they want as well. So don't forget to like and subscribe to us on all our social media platforms. That way we can give you the best content each and every week. And don't forget to follow the Red, White, and Bills and Sean Kula on Instagram and YouTube as well. He does an amazing job on his podcast as well on the Red, White, and Bills. Fantastic work, and we've been collaborating left and right on the show as well. So can't wait to have some great content with him as well as the Nickel City Mafia and the guys from Nickel City Mafia. Jake and Mike from the Nickel City Mafia do an amazing job. You can find them on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook as well at Nickel City Mafia. This has been the Go Bills Podcast, and we will see you this weekend on Sunday for our pregame show. You can find that on Instagram and YouTube at 12:30 right before the game. We'll go over the inactives for the game, highlights before the game, talking about what we saw in the Thursday night game as well. We'll talk about that a little bit and talk about what the Bills need to do to make sure that they don't have their third straight loss this week against the Cleveland Browns. Talk about that, talk about the inactives, and talk about the keys to the game as well. As well as we'll have our halftime show on Instagram and Facebook, or Instagram and YouTube, at the halftime, at the midpoint of the Browns and Bills game. As well as we'll have our post-game show immediately following the conclusion of the Browns and Bills game as well. This has been the Go Bills Podcast, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Go Bills Podcast. Until then, Go Bills.